My sister moved into my house. I thought I was saving her. I didn't know she'd come to destroy everything I'd built, piece by piece, with a smile on her face. I still remember the smell of that morning. Fresh coffee, a hint of cinnamon from the rolls I'd baked the night before, and the faint hum of the refrigerator that filled the quiet space of my kitchen. It was early spring, one of those mornings that tricks you into believing peace can last forever. I was standing at the window, watching the first light hit the magnolia tree outside, when Denise pulled up in that old blue SUV of hers, the one our daddy gave her before he passed. It coughed up smoke as she parked in my driveway, like the car itself was sighing from exhaustion. She stepped out wearing her usual, a bright yellow blouse, 2 big hoop earrings, and that tired but defiant look she'd carried since high school. I remember smiling, waving her in, feeling proud that after everything, I could finally give her a place to land. "Morning, Dee," I said as she dragged her suitcase up the porch steps. "Lord, this humidity already," she huffed, wiping her forehead with a paper towel. "You sure this air conditioner still works?" I laughed softly. "Still works fine if you stop complaining long enough to feel it." We both chuckled, and for a moment, it felt easy again, like before the years of silence and side eyes at family dinners. Denise was my older sister by 2 years, but we'd always been opposite sides of a coin. She was charm and chaos. I was quiet and order. She hugged me, a little too long, a little too tight. "Thank you for letting me stay," she whispered. "Just for a few weeks, till I get back on my feet." I squeezed her hand. "It's fine. You know I've got the space. And I could use your help at the office anyway." That was my first mistake, inviting her into my business. You see, after our parents retired, I started a small event planning company right here in town. Weddings, baby showers, fundraisers, you name it, I handled it. I built it from scratch, working late nights, answering client calls on my lunch breaks, running on coffee and stubborn hope. And when I made enough to open an office on Main Street, I hung a sign that read Lydia & Co. Events. I always told folks the & Co. stood for the family that helped me along the way. Truth was that Co. was a dream, a promise that one day it'd really be a family business. So when Denise said she'd move in and lend a hand, I saw it as that dream finally coming true. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that family dreams can turn into family debts faster than you think. That night, after we unpacked her things, we sat at the kitchen table eating leftover spaghetti and talking about the past. She told me about losing her apartment after her last job went under, about the man she was kinda seeing, but not too serious, about how she just needed a clean slate. "I just need to work, keep my head down, and help you," she said, twirling her fork in the noodles. "You built something good here, Lyd. I can tell." Her words warmed me, but there was something in her eyes, not envy exactly, but a kind of quiet measurement, like she was studying what I had and how I'd managed to keep it. Still, I brushed it off. Sisters see through each other too easily sometimes, and I told myself I was imagining it. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a kind of cautious happiness. The sound of her soft footsteps down the hallway reminded me of childhood, of 2 girls whispering secrets past midnight, of shared laughter and shared pain. I told myself we were rebuilding something sacred, but in reality, I just opened the door to my own undoing. The next morning, she joined me at the office. I introduced her to my assistant, Carla, a sweet young woman who'd been helping me for years, and showed Denise how we managed client payments, invoices, and event budgets. She caught on quickly, a little too quickly. Within days, she was handling phone calls, coordinating vendors, even charming our toughest clients. Everyone loved her energy, and I was proud. "She's got a gift," Carla said one afternoon, watching Denise laugh with a bride-to-be over the phone. "She does," I agreed. Always did, and for a while, things were good. We booked more clients than ever. We even started talking about opening a second office, a dream I'd kept tucked away for years. But something deep down started to shift, something small, almost invisible. It began with a look, a moment I didn't understand until much later. I just finished a client call when I saw Denise quickly minimize a window on her computer. She smiled a little too brightly. "Just checking emails," she said, tapping the keyboard. I nodded, but my chest tightened. It was nothing. I told myself that. Sisters don't spy on each other. Sisters trust. But that small flicker of unease stayed with me, like the faint smell of smoke you can't quite find the source of. And as the days passed, that smell only grew stronger. Part 2 normal life/setup plus the first suspicion. For a few weeks, life found a kind of rhythm, the kind you don't question because it feels good. Denise and I worked side by side. and her laughter filled the little office again. We'd grab lunch from the corner cafe. She always got a chicken salad sandwich and sweet tea, and sit by the window gossiping about clients, neighbors, and which celebrity wedding we'd love to plan if we ever made it big. Sometimes she'd lean back in her chair, grin, and say, "You know, Lyd, we really got something special here. I can feel it. You handle the design, I handle the people. Perfect combo." And I'd smile, believing her. Because that was the sister I'd missed, the one who could make the ordinary feel like a dream. At home, she cooked dinner most nights, blasting old R&B in the kitchen while stirring pots like she was on a cooking show. I'd come in after finishing late invoices, and she'd pour me a glass of wine before I could even ask. One night she said, "I can't believe I wasted so many years chasing other people's dreams when I could have been building something with you." That line stuck with me. It sounded sincere, regretful even. But later, I realized it wasn't a confession, it was a strategy. Our business grew fast, too fast, maybe. We started getting clients from neighboring towns, and suddenly money was flowing in. New contracts, higher deposits, more responsibility. And that's when I noticed the first small inconsistency. It was a client named Mrs. Pruitt, sweet older woman, planning her 50th anniversary party. She stopped by to drop off her final payment in cash, $1,200 even. Denise took the envelope with a smile, said she'd file it with the day's deposits. But 2 days later, when I checked the ledger, that payment wasn't there. I thought maybe I miscounted, or maybe Carla had forgotten to log it. So I asked gently, trying not to sound accusatory, "Hey Dee, do you remember Mrs. Pruitt's payment? I don't see it in the books." Denise didn't even look up from her laptop. "Oh yeah, I took it to the bank Monday. You know how slow that system is. Probably just hasn't updated yet." Her tone was casual. Too casual. I nodded, telling myself she was right. But something tugged at me. Later that afternoon, I called the bank myself. The teller told me no such deposit had been made. I didn't say anything, not then. Instead, I walked outside and stood by my car, staring at the traffic rolling down Main Street, the sound of engines blending with the whisper of wind through the trees. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always come crashing like thunder. Sometimes it creeps in soft, quiet, like rain seeping under a door. A week passed. Then another. Denise started taking more control over the finances. She insisted on handling invoices, saying it was less confusing for clients. She also started staying late, later than me sometimes, claiming she needed to catch up on emails. At first, I was proud of her initiative. But pride turned into a knees when I noticed her new clothes, designer handbags, manicured nails, a new gold watch I knew she couldn't afford. "Girl, you treating yourself lately," I said one morning, smiling as I poured coffee. She laughed, brushing it off. "Oh please, this old thing? You know me, I find deals." She winked, but I noticed her eyes didn't match the smile. Then came the client call that made my stomach twist. It was a Tuesday afternoon when a man named Mr. Franklin rang the office. He was polite, but confused. "Hi, I'm calling to confirm our event with Lydia and co-planning. My wife said we paid the deposit, but I haven't received the contract yet." "Of course," I said, flipping through the records. "Can I get the date of your event?" "June 14th, he replied, but I froze. There was no Franklin event on June 14th. No Franklin at all. I asked him gently, "Sir, who did you send your payment to?" He paused. "A woman named Denise. She said she was part of the company. I sent $800 through Zelle to her personal account." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just sat there, pen in hand, heart beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. When I finally found my voice, I said, "Thank you, Mr. Franklin. I'll look into this right away." After hanging up, I sat perfectly still, staring at the phone. The world felt quieter than it should have. Even the ticking of the wall clock sounded sharp, almost mocking. That was the moment I knew something was wrong, not just a mistake or a misunderstanding. Something intentional. That night, Denise came home late again. I was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting. The light above her flickered as she walked in, dropping her purse with a sigh. "Hey," she said, forcing a tired smile. "You're up late." "Yeah," I said softly. "Had a long day, spoke to a new client, a Mr. Franklin." She froze. It was just for half a second, but I saw it, that flicker of panic before she recovered. "Oh yeah? That name sounds familiar. Did he confirm?" "Yes," I said. "He mentioned sending a deposit to your personal account." The silence that followed could have split the air in two. Her face tightened, then softened, then tightened again. Finally, she laughed, a small, forced sound. "Oh, that. Yeah, I was just holding it for a second until the company account cleared. You know how banks can be. But her voice wavered on the word holding. I nodded slowly, pretending to believe her. But deep down, something in me shifted, a small fracture in the foundation of trust we'd built since she moved in. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to be sure. Because when betrayal hides behind family, you can't rush the truth. You have to let it reveal itself, piece by painful piece. The guest room. When my sister Tanya moved in, I made up the guest room like I was welcoming royalty. Fresh sheets, candles, even that little lavender spray she used to love back in the day. It had been 15 years since we'd lived under the same roof. But I thought maybe, just maybe, time had softened whatever broke between us. She walked in smiling, suitcase rolling behind her, perfume floating in before she even said hello. "May," she said, wrapping her arms around me like the years hadn't happened. And just for a second, I believed her. The first few weeks were quiet, too quiet. Tanya cooked sometimes, cleaned a little, and laughed a lot with my husband, Derek. Too much laughter, maybe. But I pushed it down. You know how we do. We tell ourselves family's family. Then small things started disappearing. Not big things, just moments. Derek used to pour my coffee first. Now he poured hers. He used to ask how my day was. Now it was Tanya, "You okay? You need anything?" One night, I walked past the living room and saw them sitting close, not touching, but close enough for the air to feel thick. Tanya was whispering something, and Derek was laughing like a boy. I stood there in the dark, frozen, feeling the cold press against my chest. She saw me. She looked right at me and smiled. Not a guilty smile, a knowing one. Next morning, she asked if I had any sugar for her coffee. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Baby, I think you done had enough sweetness for one house." She just laughed, and that laugh. It echoed all through my kitchen like a curse I didn't know I'd invited in. Part 3. The cracks in the walls. After that morning, the house started talking to me. Not with words, but with sounds only a woman who's lived long enough can hear. A chair sliding when nobody is in the kitchen. A door closing soft in the middle of the night. And laughter, low, muffled laughter that stopped the moment I walked in. I started keeping notes. Not because I was crazy, no. Because I knew. Every woman knows when the air changes in her own home. It's the way silence stretches too long after a question. The way eyes shift just a heartbeat too late. Derek had been distant before. I blamed the bills, the long hours life. But this was something else. He started coming home late. Not the kind of late that smells like work. The kind that smells like lies. One evening, I made his favorite, smothered chicken and cornbread. The man barely touched his plate. Tanya, though. She ate like she was starving. "May, this tastes just like Mama used to make," she said. And Derek smiled at her, that slow, soft smile that used to belong to me. I sat there, watching the two of them, feeling something in my chest tighten like a rope. I wanted to scream, but instead, I smiled back and said, "Ain't it funny how history repeats itself? Even the recipes." Tanya froze for just a second, just long enough for me to see it, guilt flashing behind those pretty brown eyes. That night, I heard them again, her voice, low and careful. His voice trying to hush her, then a thud, and the sound of her whispering, "She's going to find out." I sat up in bed, staring into the dark, and for the first time, I wasn't scared. I was calm, because I realized something. They thought I was the fool in this story, but I was just letting them finish writing their part before I began mine. Part 4. The proof in the mirror. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't mean peace. It's heavy, like air before a thunderstorm. For days, our house sat under that kind of silence. I stopped asking Derek where he'd been. I stopped looking for Tanya when she disappeared for hours. Instead, I watched, listened, waited. I learned patience from my mother. She used to say, "If someone's digging their own grave, baby, don't grab the shovel, just hand them water so they don't faint before they finish." One Saturday morning, I went into the office early. We had a few client files that hadn't been balancing, small amounts missing here and there. I wanted to clean up the books myself before tax season. When I opened the ledgers, I saw something strange. 2 invoices with the same client name, different amounts. One matched our records. The other led to an account I didn't recognize. At first, I thought maybe it was a typo, but the account name made my stomach twist. T. Harris Consulting. My sister's name was Tanya Harris before she married. She hadn't used that name in years. I clicked deeper, and there it was, payments redirected from 3 of our biggest clients. Small enough to go unnoticed. But over 6 months, it added up to nearly $10,000. $10,000 of trust. Gone. I sat there for a long while, just staring at the screen. The clock ticked loud, each second landing like a nail in wood. Part of me wanted to storm home and drag her out by her hair. But another part, the woman I've grown into, knew better. So instead, I printed everything. Every receipt. Every transfer. I put it all in a folder and locked it in my desk drawer. Then I went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and looked in the mirror. And what I saw wasn't a broken woman. It was a woman who finally stopped begging people to love her right. That evening, I cooked dinner like nothing was wrong. Pot roast, sweet potatoes, a salad. The table looked like Sunday, but it was Judgment Day. When Tanya sat down, I watched her hands, how they trembled when she picked up her fork. Derek kept glancing at me, trying to read my face. And in that moment, I decided to give them both exactly what they'd given me. A performance. You know, I said softly, I finally balanced the accounts today. Took me a while, but everything's in order now. Tanya froze, mid-bite. Derek cleared his throat, staring down at his plate. I smiled, that same smile I wore when I caught my kids sneaking cookies as teenagers. Kind. Patient. Dangerous. It's funny, I added, still stirring my tea. The numbers always tell the truth, even when people don't. And that was the last peaceful meal we ever shared in that house. Part 5. The confrontation. I didn't sleep that night. The folder sat on my nightstand like a living thing, breathing, waiting. By dawn I knew. Today was the day the lies had to meet the light. I brewed a pot of coffee, strong enough to steady my hands. Tanya came downstairs first, robe tied too tight, eyes puffy from a night she probably hadn't slept either. She tried to walk past me, but I said her name the way a mother says it when she already knows. Tanya. She stopped. Didn't turn. Sit down. She obeyed, slow, quiet. My voice wasn't angry. It was final. Derek followed a minute later, still smelling like cologne he didn't wear for me anymore. He froze when he saw the folder on the table. I slid it toward them. You know what this is? Neither spoke. Tanya stared at the folder like it might burn her fingers. Those are our client files, I said, voice steady. Except these ones don't come to our account. They go to one called T. Harris Consulting. You wouldn't happen to know who that is, would you, Tanya? Her lips parted, then closed again. Derek shifted beside her. May, let's not do this right now. No, Derek. We're exactly doing this right now. The kitchen clock ticked, slow and cruel. I could hear the neighbor's dog bark through the open window, the sound of life going on while mine paused. Tanya finally spoke. I was going to tell you. I needed money. Things got tight. Tight? I asked. You live under my roof, eat my food, drive the car I helped you finance. What exactly got tight? Tears welled up. But I'd seen those tears before. The kind that come to soften the blow before the truth lands. It wasn't just me, she whispered. Derek knew. We were planning to start our own side business. I didn't mean for it to hurt you. Those words, side business, cut deeper than any curse. Because that's what betrayal sounds like when it tries to dress itself as ambition. I turned to Derek. He couldn't even meet my eyes. Just stared at the floor like a boy caught stealing from the offering plate. You? I asked quietly. Was this your idea? He finally looked up, and for a moment I saw the man I used to love trapped behind the man he'd become. It wasn't supposed to go this far, May. We thought. You thought what? That I'd never notice? That you could rob me blind and smile at my table every night? My voice cracked then, not from rage, but from grief, because that's what betrayal really is. Grief wearing anger's clothes. Tanya started sobbing. Derek reached for her hand, and that sight nearly broke me. That my own sister found comfort in the man who'd sworn to protect me. Don't, I said. Not in my house. They froze. I took a deep breath, slow and deliberate. Here's what's going to happen. You're both going to pack your things and leave. I'll deal with the clients myself. The money you took, consider it the price of learning who you really are. Tanya begged. May, please. I didn't mean to destroy everything. You didn't destroy everything, I said, standing tall. You just destroyed us. The business can be rebuilt. Trust can't. Then I turned and walked out before the tear swan. Behind me, I heard suitcases being dragged, drawers slamming, the door closing. And just like that, the house was quiet again. But this time, the silence felt clean. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the folders still there. The papers that once broke me now felt like proof of freedom. I poured a glass of wine, took a long sip, and whispered to myself, "You're still standing, May. That's enough for tonight." Part 6. The public consequence. I wish I could say things quieted down after they left. That peace settled back into my life like dust after a storm. But that would have been too easy. Word travels fast in a small town, especially when it smells like scandal. Within days, clients were calling, some angry, some confused. Others were kind, saying they'd heard what happened and wanted to keep supporting me. But every conversation felt like a fresh cut, reopening the wound. My parents called next. Mama's voice was soft but heavy. "May, honey. Tanya came by the house. She's devastated. Said you threw her out with nowhere to go." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. "She has somewhere to go, Mama. She has Derek." There was a pause on the line, that kind that carries judgment dressed as pity. "You two have always been close," Mama said. "Maybe it's time to sit down and talk like family." I wanted to scream. But instead, I said quietly, "Family doesn't drain your savings and call it love, Mama." She sighed, that long, world-weary sigh mothers use when they don't want to choose sides but end up doing it anyway. "She made mistakes," she said. "But she's still your sister." I wanted to tell her that sentence was exactly the problem. She's still my sister, which meant every part of me wanted to love her, even after she burned the bridge between us. A week later, my father showed up unannounced. He didn't knock, just walked in like he always had when I was little. Except this time, the house felt too big, too empty. He sat at the table, clearing his throat before speaking. "Your mama's worried. Tanya's been staying in a motel out by the interstate. Says Derek's been avoiding her calls." "Good," I said coldly. "They deserve each other." He didn't respond. Just looked at me the way only a father can, half proud, half disappointed. "May, your mama, and I raised you girls to look out for each other. To remember that no matter what, blood is blood." "So what?" I asked, my voice shaking. "She steals from me, and I just pretend it's fine because we share a last name?" His silence said everything. He didn't understand. Maybe he couldn't. Later that week, I was in town delivering invoices when I overheard two women whispering near the post office. "You heard about the Harris sisters? The older one took off with her brother-in-law's money. Tragic. That younger one, she's always been the responsible one." They looked at me without realizing I'd stopped just behind them. I gave them a polite smile, the kind that hides a heart still bleeding, and walked away. The betrayal had turned into gossip, the gossip into pity, and pity is the last thing you want when you're trying to stand tall. Still, something inside me began to shift. Maybe it was the anger cooling, or the exhaustion finally catching up. But I realized if I kept carrying their shame, I'd never have room to rebuild my pride. So I went back to the office, our office, though now it was just mine, and cleaned house. I changed the locks, repainted the walls, and rebranded the business. Harris & Co. became May Works Consulting. The first time I saw that new sign go up, I felt something close to peace. Not full peace, not yet, but the beginning of it. A month later, Mama called again. Her voice trembled this time. "May, Tanya's been in an accident. She's in the hospital. It's bad." My stomach dropped. The kind of drop that drags every memory down with it. The laughter, the fights, the birthday cakes, the betrayals, all tangled together. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys and drove. When I got there, the nurse led me to a small, sterile room. Tanya lay there, pale and bruised, her arm in a cast, tubes running from her wrist. She looked smaller than I remembered, not just physically, but spiritually, like all her fire had finally burned out. She looked up at me and whispered, "You came." I swallowed hard. "You're still my sister." She started crying, soft, broken sobs that shook her shoulders. "I lost everything, May. Derek left. The clients turned on me. I don't even know who I am anymore." I sat beside her, staring at the wall. "You're my sister. You made terrible choices, but you're still blood, and that means something even now." She reached for my hand. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I took it. Because forgiveness isn't about erasing what happened. It's about deciding the pain doesn't get to own you anymore. Part 7. The resolution and healing. Returning from the hospital that day, I felt a heaviness, but also a strange lightness, like carrying a bag of stones I'd finally chosen to set down. The business, once a shared dream now fractured by betrayal, was slowly becoming mine again. I began the painstaking work of repairing client relationships. Some were hesitant, understandably so. I listened more than I spoke, acknowledged the past without over-explaining, and promised transparency moving forward. It wasn't easy. Every phone call, every email reminded me of what had been taken, not just money, but trust. Yet slowly, the trust returned, one careful step at a time. Mama and Papa remained complicated. They tried to mediate, to ease the pain between us, but I kept my boundaries firm. I could forgive Tanya, but I would not allow her or anyone else to manipulate me again. Family loyalty doesn't mean blind acceptance of wrongdoing. I told them gently, I love my sister, but I can't let her hurt me or the business again. That is not betrayal, it's self-preservation. They nodded, reluctantly understanding. Sometimes love is not a shield for someone else's choices. It's a steady hand guiding your own. Tanya eventually left town, quietly, ashamed but alive, carrying the lessons she refused to learn until the consequences were undeniable. I never rejoiced in her misfortune. Instead, I felt a quiet satisfaction in the truth being revealed. Justice, in its simplest form, doesn't require vengeance, only honesty and accountability. And as I rebuilt the business, I discovered something I hadn't anticipated: resilience. Mayworks Consulting began to flourish, not just financially, but as a symbol of integrity and persistence. Clients appreciated the transparency, the calm professionalism, and the sense that someone genuinely cared about them beyond profit. At home, evenings became my sanctuary again. I'd brew tea, watch the sunset through the living room window, and reflect on everything that had happened. The house no longer carried the tension of secrets and whispers. Instead, it carried warmth, small laughter, and the aroma of meals shared without guilt or suspicion. I forgave Tanya, not to excuse her, but to free myself. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. I realized, not the person who wronged you. We cannot change what others do, I whispered one evening, but we can decide what we allow to define us. And slowly, the fear, the anger, and the grief ebbed. They were replaced by a quiet pride and a deep understanding that family, business, and integrity could coexist if boundaries were honored and honesty remained at the center. I now look at the business, the home, and my life and feel gratitude. Gratitude not for what was taken, but for what remains. Lessons learned, dignity preserved, and the knowledge that I am stronger than I ever imagined. The moral, as I've come to understand it, is simple. Betrayal does not have to break you. It can teach you where your strength truly lies and who is worthy of your trust. Would you have drawn the line as I did? Would you have forgiven but never forgotten? Tell me in the comments, because sometimes sharing our stories is the first step toward healing.